Hi everybody, it's Elayne from the Sewing Basket. We're going to talk about squaring up quilts today. Karen made this beautiful quilt and started asking a few questions about easiest way to square up a quilt. So we decided to do a quick video, figuring everybody else has probably the same questions. So when you get your quilt back from the long armor or you quilt it yourself, there'll always be some excess batting and you need to square up the corners so that your quilt lays nice and flat. So you need a couple tools, a rotary cutter, some type of a square up ruler, and a straight ruler. The 12-inch square works fine, most everybody has that. My particular favorite is the 20.5 ruler. It makes a really nice big corner cut. But I'm going to use the first corner, I'm going to use this smaller ruler, which is the one most of you have. What you're going to do is pull the quilt to an area, get a nice big table that you can spread out on. Get your cutting mat underneath. Be sure the cutting mat is under the whole quilt and that there aren't any seams if you've got a couple cutting mats put together, because it won't cut well over that seam between the mats. And then what you're going to do is take the square up ruler. If you're not familiar with the square up ruler, there's always a corner that says 1 and 1. So I can count from 1 to 12 this way and 1 to 12 this way. If you are right-handed, that should be in your top right corner. If you're left-handed, the other way. That allows you to measure the quilt in two directions. I'm going to lay this on top of the quilt, and what I'm going to do is measure how wide that border is. It's about 2 1/8. And again, this outer edge might not be perfectly straight. So I'm going to call that 2-inch finished. I'm going to trim off just that tiny bit. I could do 2 1/8, but that's kind of a hard notch, or hard mark on the ruler to see. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. On this side, I've got just a tiny bit less. So I'm going to call this a 2-inch border all the way around. And I'm going to line up the 2-inch line. And because my square up ruler is here, I know this is 1, 2, and this is 1, 2. So I'm going to line up the 2-inch line both sides. I'm going to look at my 45-degree angle. This particular quilt has rectangles. Oftentimes that 45-degree angle will go from corner to corner on your square blocks, which helps you get it straight. Here I can look at that first block, the corner of that first block, and see that that's nice and straight. I don't have a second place to measure it here, but I can see very clearly 2 inches, 2 inches. And I'm going to just cut here and cut here. That squares up my corner so that it is nice and straight, looks great. And I'm going to do that on all 4 corners. I'm not going to make you watch me do that. I'm going to do one more, and then I'll show you how to connect them. And then you finish the entire quilt the same way. Make sure there's nothing under the back. On this one, I'm going to use the big ruler so you can see how handy this is. And again, I'm looking for that corner that says 1, 1, upper right-hand corner. Pull that up onto the table a little bit more. And I'm lining up that 2-inch line on both sides, right along the edge of that block. The seam line between the border and the block. Both, get it nice and straight, both the side and the top. And that looks good. And be sure that at this corner, the quilt isn't kind of pulling to this side, so it's not straight. You want to be sure you're looking at that 2-inch line that's nice and straight all the way to both edges. This one's real handy because you can lean on it. That corner. That looks good. All right, so now I've got 2 corners done. I would continue and do all 4 corners, but because we're doing a video, you really don't need to watch me do that. So now we're going to connect the 2, and I'm going to do it on an angle so you can see. Normally I would be doing this straight up and down, but I need to connect these 2. So I'm going to use my long straight ruler, and I'm going to line up that 2-inch line right along that seam line between my blocks. Make sure this is nice and straight, not hanging off the end of the table and pulling. Right there and right there. Slide this over. And now I'm going to line up this outer edge and the 2-inch and my outer edge and 2-inch here. And again, I want to make sure that's nice and straight. If the quilt is laying kind of bowed like this, you can just give a pull down here to be sure it's nice and straight all the way across. And when I say straight, I mean this line, not the outer line. The outer line is going to bobble a little bit based on how it was stretched while it was quilting. There's always a little bit of a stretch. And that looks good. And my quilt is now squared up along those edges. Again, do each corner and then connect that middle seam. Don't throw this away. This is great scrap. I use a lot of this for different small projects. I also, when there's a fair bit of fabric left, I'll use these small pieces as little testers. When I'm doing decorative stitches and things like that, I want to test the stitch to see what it looks like. And so I'll have a scrap that's got a little bedding behind it so I can see how those stitches stitch out. So it's a really nice little test scrap. I hope that all makes sense. If you've got any questions, be sure to post it in the comments. We'll keep an eye on that. See if we can make your life easier squaring up your quilts. Again, Elayne from the Sewing Basket. Thanks for watching.